Anyway, I think we're kind of done with the black shirts. I really don't want to get that much more depressed. So let's move on to some positivity in the game, which was the offense that was only 62 yards behind Northwestern in 355 passing yards, and unfortunately 110 yards rushing in the Big Ten is not going to get it done. It's just not. You got to rush for 150 or more to expect to win these kinds of games. And the rushing numbers with Grant himself were not great until he busted that 46-yarder. Yant wasn't doing anything. Allen looked like he had some potential, but as you said, he missed quite a few holes where he literally ran right up the back of his offensive lineman. I'd chalk that up to youth. Makes me wonder where Gabe Irvin was. Maybe he was in that casino with Ramir Johnson. Just a rumor going around, folks. It's just a joke. It's just a joke. But without that TD, Grant would have run for, 64, 65 yards for the day. So it wasn't great. That offensive line was not doing the job that we were hearing about they were doing in fall practice, which probably indicates that's why our defensive line was having a hell of a time stopping Northwestern's run. I mean, that stands to reason, don't you think?
Yep. Yeah, the offensive line was abysmal.
But they protected Casey Thompson quite well. That's what blew my mind. They really did a good job for most of the game keeping him clean.
Yeah, but what I noticed was that they were doing more of like a step back contain where they weren't allowing them to necessarily get immediate pressure, but what they were doing was I don't know if it was on purpose, but immediately allowing the pocket to collapse and then trying to sustain distance between that collapsing pocket and Casey Thompson for the first half. And
yeah,
that was evident in the fact that when we had to run and the offensive line was supposed to get a push or make holes, they couldn't do it. And so even though they were preventing immediate pressure on our quarterback, I think a lot of that has to do with just the fact that Northwestern basically from the beginning and all the way up until the end of the game, they didn't need to bring pressure. They just four guys. That's all they needed. Four guys, whole game. Mm-hmm. They didn't need to necessarily blitz or have an edge rusher that would come out of the side because all they wanted to do was just create pressure and almost force Nebraska. Yeah, you're going to have to pass because when it comes down to it, when you guys want to run the ball, we're not going to allow you to do it.
Yep.
It's not going to happen. So they forced us to pass the ball. I mean, when you're only able to average just under 3 yards per rush, excluding that 46-yard run that Grant performed on, I mean, yeah, why the hell not? Just keep your secondary and your linebackers completely covering the field. Because if one thing that I noticed was that when Northwestern had a guy open, he was open because there was somebody missing their assignment. When Casey Thompson completed a pass to an quote-unquote open guy,
there was a guy right on his hip.
There was a guy right on his hip. He just put the ball exactly where it needed to go. We didn't have those wide-open guys that Northwestern was able to get. And so when I look at the offensive line on our side of the ball, they were doing zero favors for Thompson other than, yes, they were for the first half sort of kind of preventing pressure on him. Right. But when the context is that they were only pressuring him with four guys the whole time, that's not good. That's not good at all. And it was almost like Pat Fitzgerald.
And when they did bring a blitz, they got him to the ground on the one sack. Was one of the few times they brought a blitz. So, and the few times that we'd bring pressure with more than the front four, there was somebody wide open. So we stopped pressuring.
It was almost like Pat.
We never were ahead far enough in the game because kind of the rule of thumb is you get up by 2 touchdowns, then you start bringing heavy duty pressure on the quarterback, force him to make, because that's when things start rolling the wrong way. We never got that far ahead, so we never really took some gambles in the pressure game that maybe we could have if we would have been able to get ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead. I interrupted something you were going to say.
I was just going to say, to me, it seemed like, and this is just me reading the tea leaves here, it seemed like Pat Fitzgerald knew before the game even started that he wasn't going to need to do much to dominate our offensive line. It was almost like he was whipping out his cock and just like displaying it for Scott Frost. Like, look, I'm only going to throw 4 guys your way, and I'm going to win this 95% of the time.
Well, here comes the explicit tag.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. Wouldn't be the first time.
This is the right game for it. So
yeah, we gotta. Yeah, I hear you. And there was, of course, the 2 interceptions in the second half. One of them was certainly an overthrow by Thompson, and then the other one was. I'm not sure if it was an overthrow or he expected his receiver to do something different. Rewatching the game on BTN in 60 Minutes, you couldn't hear what the commentary was as to why maybe that was an interception. I don't remember it at the time watching it yesterday. But it was definitely an overthrow, and the other one was tipped by the receiver being targeted for a pass for the first time in the game. Wyatt Lever, best as I could tell, I'd never seen him in the game the whole time.
Yeah.
And it's in the crunch time in the fourth quarter. He's in there to catch a bullet pass over the middle. Anyway, yet again, more curiosity on how they're rotating players in and out. It just kind of surprised me.
Yeah, when I rewatched it, I didn't watch the full 60 minutes. I just watched the highlights, which, as I texted with you earlier, I'm only going to get to see the highlights. I don't get to see all of the garbage plays, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately. But yeah, that first pass to frick guy from Iowa that transferred, I was really high on
Martin.
him, number 89. Yeah. Oliver Martin. Like, the ball was completely catchable. I watched it in slow motion. I was like, I'm going to watch this pass in slow motion and see if he fully extends his arm for the catch. And he never does. He crab arms it. He does this little and I think if he would have get it, and I tried another thing. I watched it in slow motion to see if maybe the defender had his arms wrapped around his biceps or something, and that's why he couldn't extend his arms. But no. He was underneath his arms. And so I just, that first interception, just dumb. Like, that's on Martin. And then the second one, oh my gosh, why are we putting Wyatt Lever into the game? If he wasn't on the starting roster, if he wasn't the first guy out there when we did our first possession starting the game, exactly what you said. Why are we putting him in crunch time? What sense does that make? Was that a Mark Whipple decision? Because I question it if it's a Mark Whipple decision or a freaking Mickey Joseph decision. I don't see that as either one of their decisions. I see it as another one of those executive Frost decisions.
Who knows? I don't think he was ever asked specifically about that choice. I'd like to point out that Isaiah Garcia Castaneda, whom our buddy Justin at the Husker Cuzcast was very high on, for good reason. He was received for over 100 yards yesterday. 8 or 7 or 8 catches for over 100 yards. Where the hell was he on that play then? The dude had Velcro for hands the whole day. But of course he had that one big catch, and then ended up being the victim of what I consider a so-so call by the refs. I think they got it wrong. Unfortunately, the video evidence wasn't capable of showing fully and completely that they got it wrong, and they're kind of stuck making the call they had to make, but they got it wrong on the field in the first place. Which that likely ended a scoring drive, and maybe that's the difference in the game. Yet again, we're talking about a game that 1 or 2 plays, something that happens with the ref's call or something that happens on special teams, which we'll get to, is basically the difference in the game.
Yeah, so. And I do have to at least look at it through an optimistic standpoint. even though, yeah, we did kind of get a bad call on that, which is expected in any game, not just for Nebraska, but for any team. You're bound to get a bad call every game.
Right.
But one thing that was notably good was the fact that we only had, one penalty the whole game?
Maybe two. I think we had an offsides, and I think we had a false start. I don't remember for sure. It was a pretty clean game, though. I don't think the two teams combined for more than 6 or 7 penalties.
Let's see. I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, we had one penalty for 5 yards.
It was offsides. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that was good. Yeah, I was pretty upset about that not being overturned, but I mean, what can you do? I mean, you look at the replay and it's really hard to interpret it. Looking at it really closely, it's pretty obvious that his knee was down. And the ball, I look at it like this. It's obvious that his knee is down. It's not obvious that the ball has come out yet. And so based on that fact alone, you have to assume that his knee is down and he still has possession of the ball. It wasn't the other way around where you can clearly see the ball out and you can't clearly see that his knee is down. It wasn't that. And so the fact that they made that decision, I don't know what footage they get a hold of when they do make those decisions. Obviously not the same that we see on TV. But whatever. Nevertheless, just went in the wrong way, and that was early on in the game. So I don't think that had, it could have ended in a scoring drive, but there were a few scoring drives that we did have that if it wasn't for something dumb that Northwestern did, we wouldn't have scored on those drives either. So it's, it kind of balances out.
Yep, absolutely.